We've heard the word productivity a lot recently, but what exactly is it? We're all guilty of saying we're busy, but sometimes we can look like busy fools. Graham Allcott joined me in the studio to talk about his good and bad habits and how you can be a productivity ninja. So Graham, welcome to Habitz.
Good to be here. Thank you.
No, it's lovely to have you. So productivity, what is it and how are you an expert in this field?
So productivity, I would actually define it as it's about making space for what matters. It's about making sure that the time and effort that you're going to put into stuff gets you the best results. And this has been really my obsession for the last sort of decade or so. So I'm the founder of a company called Think Productive. We've got offices all around the world. We work with some of the brightest, most interesting companies around the world, helping them and their people around these topics of productivity. And I'm also the author of a global best-selling book called How to Be a Productivity Ninja, which has just over the last few years been the Bible for a lot of people in terms of, you know, how they take some of these habits around productivity and make these things stick and make them a reality in their day-to-day life.
So it's safe to say you're an expert then?
Maybe, yes.
So you've picked up some good and bad habits along the way. Where do people tend to go wrong? They know they're just starting out and productivity is key. They're not really too aware of it. Where do people tend to go wrong?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we see with our clients just day in, day out. One of the things that we see a lot is people just wear busy as a badge of honor.
Right.
So people think about the idea of being busy as, you know, equating that with success. And really busy for me is about saying that person is reactive and not proactive.
Yeah.
They're much more in that zone of dealing with emails, dealing with the stuff that comes in, rather than making that space to do the quality thinking about what do I really need to be doing here? Where's the impact here? What's the stuff that's going to really make me famous in my job, right? So for me, it's about recognizing that we've got to get beyond the idea of busy and much more into a very relaxed, calm, and much more measured version of productivity.
Definitely, because when you get down and busy with it, when people say that, we're like, oh, I can't do it, I'm so busy. It's like, well, what are you busy? Why are you busy? Like, you're clearly not focusing on what you should be doing. And
what you're busy about, right? So often people do really efficiently stuff that doesn't need to be done at all, or people are just reacting to the latest stuff rather than doing the most important stuff. And these things are just, you know, they're very habitual, right? So once you get onto that kind of cycle of being busy, you'll always be more busy because you're more likely to say yes to more stuff, you know.
And it's a form of procrastination in a way, isn't it? Because you're putting off what you should be doing.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I see a lot is also people not finding it easy to say no. And again, you know, if you're busy, it's harder to see the wood from the trees. It's harder to have that sense of perspective about what you're really working on or what you should be working on. And as a result of that, it's just harder to say no because you're not seeing the full menu of options of here's what I should be doing right now.
And that's a golden rule right there. If you don't say no, you're not going to get the results you want. That's a massive, massive bad habit that people go wrong with.
Yeah, so Warren Buffett has a lovely phrase, which is the difference between successful people and really successful people is that the really successful people say no to almost everything.
I love that. So true.
Yeah, so I talk about it in the book, Ninja Ruthlessness, right? And just getting ruthless with yourself, saying no to certain things, saying no to procrastination, saying no to certain habits.
And without explaining yourself as well, because we're so guilty. I think it's a British thing as well.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, no, I'm so sorry, I can't. But it's like you don't need to make excuse, just say, no, thank you.
Yeah, so no is a complete sentence, is one way of looking at it. But also we need to really say no and protect our boundaries around when we have really good quality attention to put to stuff. So one of the things that we see a lot as well is people just not doing that extra bit of thinking to get clear on what's on their plate, right? So a lot of people will have to-do lists, but what I see often is people do not have project lists. So having a list of the bigger project items and like, what do I need to achieve? What's the end point with each of those? And then similarly, with all of the actions, what I see a lot is people writing down really vague follow up with this thing or finish that or whatever. Whereas really what you need is to phrase it as the next physical thing that you're going to do to get started. And so not having just that little bit of clarity there makes it really hard when you look at your to-do list and it's 4 p.m. on a Thursday and you're tired. You just look at a lot of stuff and it just feels daunting.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do that bit more thinking up front and be really clear and specific about each of those things, then you can look at that list any time of the day and just be like, yeah, I know how to send that email to that person, right? So just having that real like specificity really helps you to just create momentum around the work that you're doing.
So flipping it on its head then, good habits of productivity, what are your best tips that you'd recommend?
Yeah, so one of the easiest ways to be overwhelmed is to keep everything in your head. So the first tip is just get everything out of your head. So write everything down. We inherently know this, right? So we know that when we were kids and we play that game, I went to the shops and I bought, and then someone says a thing and someone says another thing. We know that we can't get past 10 or 12 things in that game. So we know that our brain is not good at holding lots of information. And we also know that the day before we go on holiday, we sit and write a list, and then suddenly, we just feel calmer about being able to go on holiday. So we know that getting stuff out of our head is a really important thing. And I would go one step further than that and say actually having a really clear projects list and a really clear actions list and some other little checklists and stuff all out of your head and all in what I call the second brain is a really important thing in productivity. So that the kind of middle chapters of how to be a productivity ninja are really about how to get those second brain items set up and really have a good system around that. So just getting it out of your head is the first thing. And that's something that you can do even if you don't have good systems, you're not very organized. If you're feeling overwhelmed, just sit down with a piece of paper and a pen, get away from email, get away from distractions and just write, and just the stuff that you write down will, that will enable you to get more clarity over it. So that's just a really nice habit that you can use if you're ninja level productivity, black belt level, but it's also something that you can just do if you're just starting out with this stuff is just sit down with a back of an envelope, pen and paper or whatever, and just get that stuff out of your head. That's a really good starting point.
I am a serial note maker. I've always got my notepad and making notes down, but there's something quite satisfying though about ticking. When you get it done, it's like tick, tick, tick. You can't beat it, but it's really, really productive, like you say.
And it's actually one of those things where, so if you write things down that you've already done deliberately so that you're going to cross them off, right?
Yeah.
People do that. And the reason people do that is if you cross it off, your brain releases dopamine.
And it says stop, and then it makes you feel good.
Yeah, so dopamine's the feel-good chemical. It's like, yes, I did something. So just writing it down, even if you have done it already, so you can cross it out. The great thing about dopamine, it's really addictive, right? So that actually creates momentum because your brain is suddenly saying to you, give me the next thing, give me the next thing, give me the next thing. So that's a really good thing. If you're making those kind of notes, it will just help you to just get that motivation around what you're doing.
And what other good habits have you noticed along the way?
I would say another thing that's really important for me is the idea of daily and weekly review, which kind of comes back to what I was saying before about making space for what matters and this idea of quality thinking. We tend to have our best ideas or see things most clearly when we're not in the middle of the humdrum. In fact, we generally have our best ideas, when we're not really thinking, right? So creating that space to do that really quality thinking, to have those little eureka moments, to figure out the solution to stuff, really, really important and really easily missed. But then having some time where you're going to just really logically think through, here's what's on my plate for the day ahead, and just do that at the start of every day. And then here's what's on my plate for the week ahead, and just do that once a week. And I have a thing called the weekly checklist, which is in the book, which, again, just talks you through just all the little steps. So looking in your calendar, looking at the receipts in your wallet, like all those little things that just mean that you're up straight and ready, but also that you are sort of talking yourself through really quality thinking about all the different projects that you're doing, different actions that you're doing, and allows you to create momentum around each of those things.
Absolutely. Again, I do that. I got a Friday evening when it's the weekend, what have I got to do? But when it's crossed off, like you say, you feel like you can relax more. I feel like, I've done that. I can take it deeper. But even in work every day, I always write like a self-appraisal, like weekly, this went well, this didn't went well. It's how going forward, what we can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final thing I would say is, so a productivity ninja is a human and not a superhero. And this is really important. There's so much stuff out there online which, sort of creates and promotes this idea of hustle and this idea of just working ourselves to the bone and, 100 hours a week and all this kind of stuff. And I think that stuff's really dangerous. So a productivity ninja is a human and not a superhero. And what that means is, number one, we have limits. As humans, we have a certain level of energy. And we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much about the times where we're, perhaps, that energy is on the wane a little bit. We're a bit tired. Find and sort of give yourself through that second brain. Give yourself really simple things to do when you just don't have much energy.
Where can people find you and find out about your book, your website, your business? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so my business is Think Productive. So we're just at thinkproductive.com all around the world. And the book is How to Be a Productivity Ninja. And then I have my own website at grahamallcott.com if you want to connect with me there as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on, Graham.
Pleasure.
Make sure you check out all our other content in all the usual places. See you next time.